So project cost is a subledger that bolts onto Dynamics GP. It integrates with payables, receivables, inventory, sales orders, purchase orders, payroll, GL, and SmartList modules. It eliminates unnecessary keystrokes and double entry. It automates the creation of invoices, employee expense transactions, payroll transactions, project budgets, and project POs. It makes your work simpler and easier inside GP by allowing your users to log in anywhere, anytime to record time and expense information. And managers can use the powerful budgeting and project analysis tools. Let's see how. Inside of Dynamics GP, over to the left, you'll notice that project cost is another subledger listed among all of the out-of-the-box subledgers of Dynamics GP. It has the very same construction as the other home pages in that it has 7 area pages. And so that's what we're looking at here. Each section has the same gray band header as the subledgers inside Dynamics GP. So for instance, cards, it has all of the one-time setup information inside the project subledger. Let's start by taking a look at Cards Project Explorer. Here you'll notice that what we're looking at is a tree view of our projects and tasks. Now in project cost, we allow 2 levels of project tracking. One is a master project or a contract level, and under that we have a sub-project, so 2 levels of folder icon, and our second level is a sub-project. So for reporting roll-up, this network upgrade project would roll up under co-locate, and co-locate is a master project that we will continue to use throughout the year, and we'll continue to add sub-projects that roll up under co-locate as the master. So underneath the sub-project network upgrade, we have a plus sign. I'm just going to click on the plus sign to expand the tasking. So we have master and sub-tasking that we can layer in 9 levels deep. Each level can have 999 tasks underneath it. So if I expand purchases, you'll notice that we have a subtask of hardware. Okay, and under labor, we have a subtask of consulting. And it's at this lowest level that you can drill into the task. You can see how it's set up and how it's allowed to be used. So for instance, consulting here can only be used for labor tracking. Can't be used for AP transactions or material movements or purchase order transactions. It can only be used for labor entries. And if I click on the accounts button, that's when I find out what labor account it maps to. So this is the cost of goods sold expense account that it's mapped to here. If it was going to get marked up and pushed over to sales, you would have a revenue count here as well. But these would allow the task to always default to the correct GL account. All right, so basically that is the hierarchy here. We have a master project, a sub-project, a master task, and a subtask. At the lowest level, ideally, we would drive one-to-one to a GL account. Every time consulting is used, it would drive to 1 expense account and 1 revenue account. Every time hardware is used, it would drive to 1 expense account and 1 revenue account, and so on. Okay, so how does that come into play when we're just working inside Dynamics GP? Well, one of the benefits of our project cost subledger is that you natively tag our projects and tasks from any out-of-the-box GP window. So for instance, if you're going to go do an AP voucher, I'm going to go to transactions, transaction entry, just like I normally would, and I'm going to put in an AP voucher. So let's say I do auto financing. This is their invoice number to me, and I'm going to put it in for $1,000. When I tab off of the $1,000, that's when project cost pops up. Now, this pop-up can be completely automated across your company. It can be suppressed for everyone in your company. And to get to it, you have to do a Control-Z as in zebra to fetch the window, or it can be different for each individual. So if only 4 people need the project subledger, then we only turn it on to default for those 4. Okay, so here you'll notice that we have an invoice for auto financing for $1,000, And basically this window pops up to remind you this is your opportunity to tag that $1,000 to a project and task combination. So I can browse out and find a project and a task that I'd like to book. So the whole $1,000 is going to go to this project and this task and default to this GL expense account. And I'm going to click insert to commit that transaction and save. Okay, so basically that is how we function inside Dynamics GP. We are a pop-up window off the normal GP window, and we allow you to just simply tag project and task, one or more than one, as many as you need, to spread your expense over the correct amount of project task combinations. And then we piggyback on the normal GP transaction through its life cycle in Dynamics GP. All right, so we will store this in a batch. And what I want to show you is the impact of this AP voucher for $1,000 on our project. So right away, you will see that in the project cost subledger, we have an inquiry section. I'll just move this up and expand it. So if I go to project model, you'll notice that I have the ability to go out and inquire on my project. So I'll just pull up the project we just booked to, our network upgrade project. And you'll notice that I have $1,500 of expenses sitting in the actual column on the purchase row. Okay, so this is a snapshot of the performance of my project right now. I can look at all revenues, labor, subcontract, purchase, and materials on the project as of this moment. And if I'm curious as to what adds up to this $1,500, I can actually drill down into the purchase hyperlink here and refresh. And that will show me that there are 2 AP vouchers booked in Dynamics GP right now, one to Ace Travel for $500 and the other to auto financing for $1,000. And I can furthermore keep drilling back to the genesis of the document. So I'm going to highlight my $1,000 transaction and drill into this little blue cost hyperlink. And that tells me that the unique project cost transaction number that was assigned to this transaction is 179. These are all the particulars about that transaction, who the vendor was, the date, etc. If I click on maintenance, I can actually see the document number inside GP, and I can click on this hyperlink called cost document number to drill back and see that this is the state of it, of that transaction inside GP right now. It's unposted. If it were all grayed out, that means it has been posted. Right now, it's still sitting unposted, but it has updated on my project, and it shows as adding $1,000 to the actual expenses on my project. So if someone were to, like a project manager, were to log in and look at the performance of this project right now, it would look as if a $1,500 has been spent in purchases and $1,000 is in the commitment column for purchase order encumbrances. Okay, so speaking of POs, let's go take a look at how that works. I'm going to close this inquiry window and go back to my transactions area page. And I'm going to go back to my purchasing subledger, and I'm going to click on purchase order entry here. And I'm going to just put in a PO real quick for $500, we'll say, to Beaumont Construction, just for services. So this is a non-inventory PO line, and I'll say one at $500 coming out of the main warehouse. Right here. Okay, so when I tab off of the extended cost, that's when project cost pops up, and project cost pops up and says, okay, that $500 goes to what project and task? Well, it goes to my project called network upgrade and my task called hardware. It defaults to this GL account, and I click insert and save. Okay, so now $500 on a PO is sitting as an encumbrance or a commitment on my project. So let's go take a look at how that extra $500 is updated on our project. Going to go to project cost and inquiry. and go to project model. Pull up my project, pull up my budget, and now I can see that I have $1,500 sitting under the commitment column. If I click on the hyperlink to commitments, and refresh, that's when I see I have two POs. I have one for $100, and I have another PO entry for $500. That is the one I just keyed in. So if I highlight that second entry and click on PO number, I can drill back to see that it's this PO 2081, and I can furthermore drill into the PO itself in GP by clicking on the PO number hyperlink. So here is actually the PO, and it's just sitting as a commitment against my project until it is received and three-way matched to vendor's invoice. At the time when it is three-way matched to vendor's invoice, that's when that increment of encumbrance dollars will move out of commitments and over to the left and become an actual purchase. Okay, is upon the three-way match. All right. So we work with the PO window, as I showed you. We work with the AP window, again, natively. We also work with inventory transaction and transfer windows. Okay, so if you were in a transfer, for instance, and you needed to get some material onto a project, you could actually do an inventory transfer and tag this amount to a project and task. So again, we operate just like a pop-up here. And that pop-up, basically, you can tag your project and task, and it will get that amount of dollars onto that project and task. All right, same with transaction entry here. So if I go to an adjustment, here I've got some phones, and if I see behind the scenes here, I did Control Z as in zebra to pop up project cost, I can see that I've tagged that 5550 to the project 12345 and the materials task. Right, so we'll see the impact of that on our 12345 project in the material line of that inquiry. Okay, so we can also do general journal entries, the financial subledger, transactions general. This is where we would do a normal GP transaction, a journal entry, and we can actually tag all of these to projects and tasks, and we can choose which lines of our journal entry need to go to a project and task. So you'll notice that I only have the cost debit tagged to a project and task, and the credit is actually just an offset to a balance sheet account called accrued expenses. So the $1,396.77 as a debit is booked to the phase 41 project and the task of 199,998. Okay, it defaults to its GL account. And then I offset it. I skipped the two fields for project and task, just came down to the cost account, browsed out to find my chart of accounts, and just chose my accrued expense GL account. And that knew to offset the entire total to that accrued expense account. And now that there is no adjustment here at the bottom, it says 0 all the way across, that tells me that I'm in balance. My debits and credits are equal each other, and I don't need to do anything else. So you'll notice here at the bottom left, it also reminds you that a unique project cost transaction number was assigned, so number 77, and that is helpful. I'll show you in just a moment how that's helpful. But to know those unique transaction numbers comes in handy for two primary reasons. I'm just going to just save this project cost window and again summarize how we do journal entries by just explaining that when you open the GP general journal entry window, you put in all the header information up here at the top. When you move your mouse down here to the first detailed line, that's when the project cost window will pop up. And you must key in all the rows of the journal entry into the project cost pop-up window, such as this. Make sure there's no adjustment amount at the bottom. Make sure that it's all 0, so nothing's left to spread, if you will, to projects and tasks or to GL accounts. It's all in balance. Debits are equaling credits, and you save that. Now we are behind the scenes now piggybacking this journal entry, but you'll notice that what we did was we sent the summary of the transaction lines up here to the journal entry window in GP. So we've updated this window with what you keyed into our project cost window. Okay, and you'd save it in a batch. The impact of that can be seen immediately on the project as an expense. I wanted to show you what can be done with the unique transaction number now that you know it. It's number 77. So there are two things you can do. Let's say that a few weeks go by, you posted that transaction, and a few weeks go by, and you realize it was booked to the wrong project task combination. Someone in accounting will have the security permissions to actually be able to get here to this window in project cost. If you go to transactions, transaction maintenance, and you type in 77 and tab, this is the transaction that is sitting right now on that, in that journal entry. And you could actually, let me clear it. It didn't update the project and task. Okay, so hold on a second. Something's messed up with that. Let me go back into the general journal entry and just look at what that is. Here, I'm going to drill in, do my control Z as in zebra. Okay, it should be phase 1, 19998. Oh, it's number 76. Do you see how it did that? Number 76. It just updated the unique transaction number. So let me go to transaction number 76 in the transaction maintenance window. Okay, so here it is. And you'll see 76 goes to phase 41 and the task 19998. And it is for that 1396.77 amount. If I needed to change the task, I could just browse out and choose any other task on that phase 41 that it allows expenses. I could change that, or I could change the project completely by browsing out of the project field. Okay, but I can edit this in any way I need to impact the project. Now, my caveat here is that you do not use this window when it is a financial impact. You would not want to come over here and change the amount because the journal entry would have one amount and project cost would have a second amount, and then you'd be out of balance. So if you're going to update any financial impact, such as the quantity or the amount or the GL account, you're going to want to journalize that with a journal entry. Okay, you want to come here to the project cost transaction maintenance window only if you're updating projects and tasks or cost categories. Okay, all right. So that's one thing you can do when you know the transaction number. The other thing you can do when you know the transaction number is you can come to routines, and you'll notice that we have an audit section. We are auditing all project, task, and transaction touches in our system, in our subledger. So if you click on transaction audit and you keyed in number 76 and tab, you'll notice that this is the origination or the genesis of that entry in project cost. It happened at 9:15 by SA user. And any changes that have been made to it will be subsequent rows in this screen. And what this last row is showing you is that this is its current state. Okay, so let me see if I can show you something that has a lot of changes. I just went to the first record in my project cost database to show you that this was the genesis of the transaction on 9/21 at 8:17. And then it says CHG for change. And these are all the subsequent changes that have happened. And this is its current state. Okay, so that's how we audit our transaction touches. And you can get to that information by knowing the transaction number and keying it in. Now, we also present that audit information in a smart list. We have our own project cost smart lists here, so a whole section of them. But you'll notice that one of the audits that we have, one of the smart lists we have is called PC Transaction Audit. If you have security, you can actually run that audit and dump that out to Excel. Okay, so that audits all transactions. Okay, so we have just a few more minutes, and I wanted to just quickly show you that we also allow budgeting, and we have a very robust budget tool. If I go to Budget Explorer, you'll notice here that if I go into my co-locate project, that I have a new icon that we haven't seen yet, and it has a little green bar piece of paper. And under that, we have our sub project, and it has a green bar piece of paper. So the master project and the sub project both have budgets. If I expand the plus sign, I can get down to the tasking, and if I go down to the lowest level of task, it opens up and shows me what's allowable, which cost categories are allowable, and I can simply put in my budget. In summary, if I need to put a detailed budget in, I can click on the hyperlink, and I could put in a line saying exactly who we're going to buy the goods from, what date, in what quantity, at what amount. Okay, if you go to this detailed method, just know that you have to maintain it. So if your timeline moves out, then you'll have to update the rows in your budget to move them out to your new schedule. Okay, we can also schedule our billings or our revenues. So sometimes we have milestone billings. We can budget that as well. We click on this scheduled hyperlink, and then we can drop in our schedule. Well, we're going to bill that on, maybe the last day of every month. We are actually going to put in, whatever our amount's going to be. So we'll say it's $1,000 at the end of every month. And so that's the month of October. This would be the month of November for 10,000 as well. Okay, so like that. And we could put a whole schedule in. What happens then is that sits as scheduled revenue, and accounting is in control of when that revenue gets queued up. When they want to actually send one of those scheduled bill lines to GP SOP, sales order processing, into a batch so that they can actually create an invoice, they would go to the approval window, which is in routines. It's called PC scheduled billing approval, and they would find their project and see that $2,000 milestone bills are sitting there, and they would just check mark the one they're ready to process, and they would hit process. And that would come out of this approval window, and now it would be ready to sweep over to GP. So in the transaction section of project cost, we have the ability to create sales order process automatically. And so I'm going to just go into that window, choose my reusable batch, and find my transaction for $1,000. Here it is under Western Canada Lottery Corporation. This is the $1,000. And if I want to, I can process it out and move it into a sales batch of my creation. So I can type in the sales batch right here. This is the normal GP SOP window as a batch. And I'm just basically creating that and processing it over. So I'm going to change that date and process it over. And I'm watching this verbiage to make sure that it is, successful. If it's not, it basically gives me the opportunity to print what happened, like what about it was it successful? If it's missing a GL account, for instance, which it is in this case, I can quickly fix that, and I can then send it over to GP in a batch. Okay, so I fixed this the sales account number here for that particular billing, and now I'm going to process it out again into the batch. I'm watching this verbiage to make sure it's successful, and it is. And so now if I go to sales, just normal GP sales batch, I can look for my WCLC batch that I created, and that bill is sitting in there now. Okay, so one of the two transactions sitting in there is that $10,000. And of course, I would then print my invoice and just show you how that looks. I'll just do report writer, not Word. And I'll show you how that looks. So basically, this is the way it has populated inside of GP. That scheduled billing is for building 1 and revenue task. And then all of these other rows are Adam Barr's time and Pilar Ackerman's time that's been marked up and put on this invoice. They also work the building 1 project. Okay, and of course this, invoice is just the way it hits out of the box. This can be customized, and also you could use the Word templates inside GP. Okay, so that is how we basically use our automation to take native GP transactions and tag them to projects and tasks. In this case, we took a scheduled billing that was in our budget window and project cost, and we swept it over to GP sales order processing so that an invoice could be created from that budgeted milestone. Okay. All right. So we also, just very quickly, I'll just show you, we also have a web portal for time entry. And that is very helpful to use because we can have all of your employees offsite and they can be logging into this portal to enter their time and track it to projects and tasks. So they'll come here into the portal. This is the month view. They would click on time and choose a project. Let's say it's phase 27. And oops, let's choose a different one. Phase 20. We'll just do building one. And the task ID would be labor. We can say trenching or framing, so I'll say framing. So again, project is chosen, task is chosen, the date is selected. So let's say that we did this back on the 29th of October. Our pay codes could be in a drop down here, so we can choose which of our pay codes. But we're basically putting in how many hours did we work to that project. Our default rate comes in. Sorry, that kind of jumped. So let's say 8 hours. And that was $50 is our cost rate. Okay, and so that's our cost rate. This is our marked up bill rate, and we just hit save. Okay, we can submit that time at the end of the week when we're ready. We can submit all of that time by selecting it and submitting it, and that will route to our approver. Your approvers will, at a certain day and time, they will be expected to come in to the portal, and they, instead of going to the time and expense portal, they're going to drop down and go to the approval portal, and that's when they're going to, their time's going to be visible here. Okay, so this is the executive time entries, this is the finance time entries, and your approver will come and just highlight each row and check out all the data down here below. If they like it, they check mark it to approve it and save. You'll notice that it approves for cost and billing, or whichever side is appropriate. And like here, this is a cost of labor. So it is approved for cost and it's approved for billing, and you can save. Okay, so that is how basically we utilize the time and expense portal to get entries put in. And those entries, once they're approved by your approver, are available for accounting to sweep over to GP for billing and to AP for reimbursing expenses. Okay. So if you have any questions about our project cost subledger, if you'd like for me to demo it for you in more depth or answer questions specific to your organization, please reach out at sales@rocktonsoftware.com or this phone number, 877-476-2586, and let me know. I'd be happy to give you a demo. I'd be happy to send you some information, our pricing, etc. Just let me know how we can help.